Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary friends, welcome back to another episode of Actors with Issues, where we bring you casual chats with the stars of TV, film, and Broadway. As always, I am your host, Juan Ayala. Joining me today is an actor and filmmaker you've seen on Law & Order SVU, Chicago Med, and he's starring in the hit CBS comedy Ghosts. Please welcome Mr. Asher Grodman. Asher, welcome to Actors with Issues. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. This is very exciting.
So we always start with a quick rapid fire round of questions.
Oh yeah,
So we're going to put 90 seconds on the clock and see how many of these you can get through.
let's go.
And we'll start with an easy one: coffee or tea?
Coffee.
A TV or film?
Ooh, at this point, TV.
Drama or comedy?
Drama.
Hero or villain?
Hero-ish villain.
Anti-hero. Stage acting or screen acting?
Screen acting right now.
Favorite comedy series?
Oh God. There was nothing that I craved more than getting home in high school Tuesday nights to watch Scrubs. So while that is not, I'm sure that is not my answer in my life, I'm gonna go with that because it's top of mind. I loved that show, those first few seasons.
What was your first non-acting job?
My first non-acting job was probably I believe it was either tutoring the SATs or I was a substitute teacher in South Central LA in Compton, which was very hard.
What is the last show you binge watched?
The last show I binge watched was oh my God. What was the last show I binge? Oh, Ted Lasso, which was amazing.
Yeah. And the last question, describe your most memorable audition in 3 words. And memorable can be good or bad, so dealer's choice. So leave that up to you.
I would say validating, vindicating, and spontaneous.
Validating, vindicating, spontaneous. Did that happen to be Ghosts or no?
No, it wasn't. It was the one that happened immediately before Ghosts.
So Asher, obviously no two actors' journeys are alike. So when did you first start acting, and when did you make the decision that you wanted to pursue it full on as a career?
Well, I grew up on a farm in the middle of nowhere, and and I had just a ton of social anxiety, and probably still do. And I was dyslexic, so I had a lot of insecurities about just anyone watching me do anything. So I was the only kid in my whole school who wasn't in the school play. And the next year, my mom forced me to do it only because and then I agreed only because I had a crush on a girl who was in the show. And then the next year, I was like hiding in the back of the school jazz band and playing guitar, and I couldn't play guitar. I had no skill set at all. And then everyone graduated, and then there was no one left in the school jazz band, and suddenly I had to start doing things. And I was just in love with this in the 7th grade with this girl whose name I will not say. But I somehow got up the nerve in front of the whole school, in front of like 1,000 kids. We were going to do Brown Eyed Girl, and there was no one to sing it. So I sang it, and I changed the words to Hazel Eyed Girl for her, which doesn't fit like the rhythm or anything like that. And of course that backfired. Like, she wanted nothing to do with me. She was humiliated. It was just a complete disaster. But there was an exhilaration in that, and kind of I think a sense of like feeling connected to a community that came from that. And that kind of connection to other people, I think a lot of actors, that's what draws us to this and that, and storytelling, and just feeling part of something. So that was the beginning of it. And then I realized I wanted to start doing it when I ended up being like the lead in the school play the next year, which is mind-boggling. So I got validation from that, which I hadn't ever really gotten before. And then something at the beginning of high school, I was like, maybe this is what I'm doing. Like this is so much fun, and everyone in the world is telling me I can't do it. So I think this is what I want to do. My parents were always very supportive, but everyone we talked to be like, it'll never happen. It's impossible. You cannot do it. You will not be successful. Um, which I guess motivated me to keep going.
And after all of that, where did you end up going to college? And did you get your like theater degree or drama degree? Or did you study something else?
I went to college at Columbia, but I was at that point where I was auditioning for pilot season because I was a kid who looked a certain way, and I was never getting any pilot. And then I tested for one in my junior year, and I kind of made a deal with myself that it was Commander in Chief with Gina Davis.
Hmm.
And I flew out to LA, and it was like a studio test, this whole like cool thing. And I made a deal that was like, if I get this, I will do it, and that'll be it. But if I don't get this, no matter what happens, I'm going to college. I only applied to one school. It was Columbia, where I had wanted to go my whole life. I obviously did not get Commander in Chief, and so I went back and I was like, I'm going to college. And I studied film and English actually, because I was working with some acting teachers in New York, who in retrospect were very damaging and very bad for me, because it sent me down a lot of bad paths. And then in college, I started getting my head on straight about, okay, what's my job here as an actor? What am I doing? And then after that, I went to grad school in San Francisco at ACT. Yeah, and then after that, I moved to LA. I was there for 3 years, and then came back to New York 3 years later. And honestly, it wasn't until I came back to New York that I started booking film and television. I think there was like an 8-year period where I couldn't get. I'd basically been unemployed for 18 years. There was an 8-year period where I couldn't get a single television job or anything. I was doing some theater while I was in LA. But yeah, I had like no signs that this was ever going to work.
So like, once you came back, you've done a lot of sort of everything. You've done television, film, New York theater, especially my editor from Media Village actually saw you in Art Fuckers.
Oh my God.
He told me, I forgot to mention it in our last interview, but he was like, oh, tell him I saw him in this show. And I was like, I will.
Please apologize to him for me.
So
Wow.
between theater and film and television, is there any that you prefer over the others?
Look, there's a, it's a tricky thing. Probably my favorite thing I ever did was I got to do Amadeus at South Coast Rep when I was living in LA. And that was such a thrill. Like, it's Mozart, and you're like, you're with the audience, and the audience is with you, and it's this really wild, thrilling thing. But it's that moment, and then it's gone, and memories fade. The only thing kind of sticks with you the longest is how something made you feel. So it's an exhilarating thing, and I would love to do a play again. But right now, there is a collaborative element of film and television that I just think is so cool. And especially with our show, because there's so many different voices and different elements that we're playing with. So I can't say that I prefer one to the other, but I'm leaning a little more towards the television film world right now, because you want to make something, especially as I get older, I'm like, I want to make something that I can like touch, that I can see.
Yeah.
You
So we actually had Roman on our show.
Yeah.
Right, I think it was right after you guys made the pilot. You weren't picked up yet, so it was very much in that limbo. So he talked a lot about sort of processing all of that, and just like, we don't know anything yet, we hope so, but knowing how the whole industry works, upfronts aren't until like May, so they don't make those decisions until right before, so it's like all this time you have to wait. But just going back a little bit, so you booked the role of Trevor, a ghost of a young Wall Street broker on the pilot of CBS Ghosts, and then it's eventually picked up to series. Months later, you guys find out at the very last minute that you guys get picked up, and then you have to make the move from New York to Montreal. Is that where you guys film?
Yep.
So what was that whole thing like? Do you have any sort of advice for actors who might have to do that last minute move?
Well, lucky for us, it wasn't really last minute, because we found out in March 31st last year that this was going to be happening, and we didn't know exactly when, but we had a good enough heads up on it. For me, actually, it was maybe this is a psychological problem that I have. But for me, it wasn't an obstacle for me because it was like, I've been doing this alone for so long.
Mm,
And now someone is telling me what to do. Now they're telling me, I need you in Montreal on this date. And it was like, great.
I'll
I'll
be
be
there.
amazing. Like, I'm not alone in this sea. Someone else is making some decisions and I'm part of a team.
Mm,
And so for me, that was thrilling.
yeah. And just going back a little bit, so during the time where you guys had started, you did the table read, and then COVID shuts down basically everything. What did you do during that time between the shutdown and then finally getting to back to the show? What did you do during that to like stay creative? How did you keep yourself busy? Did you do like Zoom script readings like every other actor out there, virtual theater? What was that time period like for you?
That's a great question. So there are two things that I do. I for so long I was so bad at auditioning. I was really horrible at it, and it wasn't until I like kind of grabbed the bull by the horns and I was like, I'm just gonna make my life about this. And I would help anyone, anywhere, anytime with any audition. It didn't matter where I had to drive, where I had to go. I was just helping everyone.
Mm,
And around that time, I started like putting it in, like structuring it into my life. So I found some classes that I liked. I work with this guy, Bob Krakauer, who's an on-camera guy who's just amazing. And in any given week, I'm doing like two classes where I'm doing two scenes. And then I started like a practice group of actors. And we
mm,
get together every Monday. We still do scenes and people just bring in their auditions and we're working. So on any given week, I'm doing three scenes because I needed to be constantly doing stuff so that the audition I would get would be the fourth thing I did that week instead of the one thing I did that
mm,
week. So there was that. And then also when I moved back to New York in 2017, I had spent some time in LA. I was working as a substitute teacher. I think I alluded to earlier. Um, and and a friend of mine who I had known at Columbia, who's a wonderful director, had just taken over the theater department at Hunter College.
mm,
And Hunter had made this wonderful investment in their theater program. And so I got back. And I started teaching acting at Rikers Island as well. And then I got in touch with him, and there was an opportunity for me to come teach there. So in the pandemic, I was teaching all of my college students online.
mm.
So I'd be doing like three scenes a week. Plus, I'd be teaching 2, 3 classes a week, and all the while hiding out on the farm where I grew up because I was terrified of getting COVID and then losing losing this job on Ghost somehow. Like, what
Yeah,
if we were going to shoot in like a week and then I got COVID from a grocery store clerk or something. I
right.
don't know. So yeah, I just hold myself up and playing with the puppy and just immersing myself in scripts.
And looking back at the journey that you've had, is there anything that you have learned that you wish you'd known earlier on? Something you know now that you wish you learned earlier?
Yeah. Um, the I find this stuff very hard because the only person you will never see act is you. And so it is disorienting.
Mm,
It's very easy to get taken advantage of. And it's very easy for, the process of being an actor. I have anxiety up the wazoo. It is like the worst thing for mental health because you're constantly putting yourself out there, and there is that thing after someone yells cut or you get to the end of the scene in the audition and there's that 3 second silence which feels like 5 minutes. That is agonizing.
yeah.
And because you've just put yourself out there, and now what? Um so I think my advice is surround yourself with people who you trust. um Embrace a focus on story rather than character or emotion, because you can lose a lot of time uh, thinking about acting as though it's a solo sport as opposed to um, a team sport. Uh, and begin to develop a barometer for what which feelings or which thoughts am I having because of something objective that's happened, or
Mm,
something that my brain is writing because no one else is filling the void with any kind of feedback.
mm.
or they're filling that void with bad things that may be irrelevant. So maybe taking everything with a grain of salt. Um, there's a lot of vulnerability in this, and you have to take care of yourself, which almost feels antithetical when you're also thinking, well, it's so competitive, and I got to keep fighting, and I got to keep da da da.
Right.
You want to be like, well, you didn't book that, what's wrong with you, da da da, and you can't operate that way.
Yeah.
Oh, and
And
last thing I'll say, honestly, is find a survival job that'll keep you in the game.
there you go.
Find something that you like to do. That I love. I just enjoyed teaching. I loved it. And help me pay bills and help me keep things straight and stay in the ring long enough for something like this to happen.
So with the name of our show being Actors with Issues, you did touch on so many different things. I'm
So
just
many of
then.
my problems.
So we have our guests touch on an obstacle that they've overcome that can be insightful to our audience of young actors. Folks have talked about imposter syndrome, uh,
Yep.
having a business mindset, creating your own content, audition anxiety, like so many things that they've touched on. We'll be at 100 episodes, I think, next month
That's
or
awesome.
very soon. This is a pandemic podcast. This was started because there was nothing else to do.
I love it. I love it.
So, is there anything that you are comfortable sharing, an obstacle you've overcome?
The audition thing is a big one. And I know I covered that already. Something else that I had was like I couldn't talk. I had a ton of vocal issues, and I'd spend a day like having a conversation, and the next day I wouldn't be able to speak. And
Mm.
so it's just, even when I did Amadeus, like I remember we did previews and I lost my voice. And so then when opening happened and like reviewers came and everything, there was a Mozart who could barely talk,
Oh boy.
which is not a great thing for the show. Um, and it took me like a week or two to heal. Um, so I think that it's just, you need to be patient with yourself. You got to be kind with yourself and find people who can be like a community with you, who you can kind of be your messy self with, because every obstacle, you can overcome every obstacle, but it's very hard to do it if you're disoriented and if you're alone.
Something pretty common that a lot of our guests have talked about is sort of like finding your tribe and
Yeah.
finding like your little actor support group to not just celebrate the wins, but also like, try and get over the losses with. And
Yeah.
especially during COVID, actors got especially lonely during this time because they couldn't even go to a bar and hang out with their actor friends or go to a class. It was virtual and you couldn't have those little side conversations. It was just everyone's on a screen and that was it. Um, but yeah.
It's also a funny thing is, even if you get like the job, especially in film and television, let's say you book this guest star that you're thrilled about or something, but like you finish shooting, cut, great, thanks. Like it's not like everyone's like, hey, listen, that was really great. Da, 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 da. You finish your scene, you worked with who you worked with, and then you're
Yeah.
out. So we spend so much time, like the work, it may not give you the jobs may not give you the community you're looking for.
Hmm.
You have to create it yourself. In LA, because LA gives you nothing. Uh, LA taught me that, because I was like, I'm completely alone here. I need to find people who I admire and who speak a language that I like to speak, and will hang out with me.
Awesome. So before we go, we always wrap up with a non-rapid fire game. So no need to worry about timing. It's called Now That We Know You, since the first one's called Getting to Know You. This one's called Now That We Know You.
I love
So we're
this.
gonna just throw some questions your way. So fill in
Right.
the
I
blank. If I weren't working in the arts, I'd be.
think I'd be an architect if I was like,
Hmm.
went back to being a child. Like I think that's where I was probably headed.
What's something that you wish you had more time to do?
God. I mean, I always wish I had more time with my puppy. I mean, it's just, that's amazing. For me, oh, another thing that I ended up doing was I'm a big football guy, and I started like a weekly game of just casual pick up football. And I started
Hmm.
that when I was living in LA. And that's like the highlight of any week. And for actors, find something that gets you in your body that you enjoy doing, because
Hmm.
that's like the best balm for anything.
Who would you trade places with for one day?
George Clooney.
Good choice. Right? Like,
That
what's a day in his life like?
sounds amazing.
uh, if you're on a desert island, somehow
Oh,
there's a working TV and DVD player. What three movies are you taking with you?
it's movies, not TV shows, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Three movies. Dog Day Afternoon, my favorite movie. Maybe In Bruges and Groundhog Day. Well, Groundhog Day would be very appropriate. Yeah, I'll do Groundhog Day.
What actor has had the biggest influence on you?
Uh, Phil Hoffman or George Clooney.
What's the best advice you ever gotten?
Oh God. This is something my dad always says, is that things are only special if you make them special.
Hmm. And what's the worst advice you've ever gotten?
Jesus. Um, Probably some acting coach trying to be like, you have to tap into something. And I'm like, no, stop,
Take out your
please.
trauma. It's like, yeah.
Take out your trauma. Yeah. Anything I would argue that almost anything about acting that involves you having to meddle with your emotions is almost entirely a waste of time, particularly in film and television, because all we care about is the story. You may have an emotional response to it, but usually emotions is a response to something. So if you focus on the story and the relationships, that'll come.
Yeah.
That's my
Great.
like
Mini masterclass.
yeah, definitely not a masterclass, but maybe my little response to years of emotional abuse.
And lastly, in 10 words or less, what advice would you give to a young actor?
Um, Treat yourself like you're your own son or daughter.
Love that.
That's what I would say.
That's really good. Uh,
Thanks.
Asher. So Asher, thank you again for being here on Actors with Issues with us. For anyone that wants to follow you on Instagram, where can they find you?
At Asher Grodman across all platforms, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. I recently got a TikTok, which I have nothing about. So
I've
I'm
yet to cave. I
disappointed
still
by
haven't
the.
gotten it.
Okay, great.
Awesome. And you can all follow us on Instagram at Actors with Issues. Give me a follow at Juaniala Official. And if you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you're listening and catch new episodes every Monday. I'm Juaniala. That's Asher Grodman. This is Actors with Issues, and we'll see you next week.